Hey guys, what's up? It's Frank here from Altcoin Buzz. That's what I usually say for Altcoin Buzz, but today, of course, we have a panel with TomoChain. TomoChain have the Defining DeFi series. We're now in part 2 of this series, and we have several exciting guests here, including Chin Chaturvedi from TomoChain, of course, John Patrick Mullin from Mantra DAO, and Ravindra Kumar from Frontier. So the panel topic discussion today is the future of chain-agnostic DeFi platforms. So this panel will discuss how the chain-agnostic platforms integrate all DeFi services like staking, lending, swapping into one place, and how these innovations are adding value and challenging centralized systems. So we have a range of questions, 4 questions, which we will ask the panelists, and they can, of course, we can have a general discussion about it. We'll bounce ideas back and forth. They will, of course, also give you guys some insight into what they are doing, what their roadmap events are, what they've already achieved, who their partners are and whatnot. And with that being said, maybe we can just get started. So maybe, Kin, you would like to start by introducing yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, sure. Thank you, Frank. So yeah, my name is Kin Chaturvedi. I'm the Chief Business Development Officer for TomoChain. So as a little bit of background, TomoChain is the largest public blockchain out of Southeast Asia. We've been in mainnet since December 2018. And our entire focus has been from the beginning in our white paper, building out an open finance-based blockchain system, which would essentially be fast, cheap, and also reduce the friction for onboarding new users. So we've built a handful of protocols, layer 1 protocols to help enable that. One of the most popular ones that right now is TomoZ, which allows for any token to be issued where the gas fee is paid by the token itself. This has allowed our ecosystem to build up quite a bit. One particular project has accrued over 100,000 users using that token because we don't have to hold Tomo. So it's just an example of what we've been trying to do, and really excited to be on this panel. So thank you very much, Frank.
Great, thanks. So, okay, let's move on. Then maybe John Patrick Mullin, you can introduce yourself and your project.
Sure. So, sure. So I'm John Patrick, or JP, from Mantra DAO, one of the co-founders and council members there. Mantra DAO is a community-governed DeFi platform attempting to create DeFi for the masses. We've seen that DeFi so far tends to be a game of what we call whale-fi, where big whales are able to take advantage of these yield farming games. So hopefully we're able to build a platform that's a little bit more, let's call it, sustainable for the average DeFi individual. We focus on creating DeFi products such as staking and lending built for the Polkadot ecosystem. But we're not just working with Polkadot ecosystem projects. We're actually also partnered with TomoChain as well. As one of our partners. So we're very excited about that. We're working with people from the Cosmos ecosystem. We are totally chain agnostic, as you can clearly see, and definitely excited to share a little bit more about what we're building.
Okay, great, thanks. And Ravindra Kumar from Frontier.
My name is Ravindra, I'm the founder of Frontier. So I've been a programmer for last 12 years. I've been doing mobile application development, and I've started working on blockchain development from 2017. So before I started working on Frontier, I used to work as CTO at Instadapp. So have been doing DeFi even before the DeFi world was invented. Okay, DeFi world was actually came to limelight when 3 people from various protocols started a group called DeFi in a Telegram. That's when it all started. Okay, I started working on MakerDAO. Okay, when there was an interface when you wanted to create a CDP, you had to send failed transactions. Okay, I've been in DeFi since then. Okay, I have been trying to solve the user experience problem of DeFi. Okay, then I started Frontier to solve the mobile problem for DeFi. Now, I'm extending Frontier further, in terms of making chain agnostic DeFi aggregation layer. We are not a protocol layer, but we are an aggregation layer of various protocols.
OG DeFi guy in the house.
That's really interesting, actually, about how DeFi originated. You mentioned there are 3 people from 3 different projects came into a chat, and then you were part of that chat?
I wasn't part of the chat, but like I was one of the guy like who joined that group, like maybe like within first 50 members who joined that group. I was one of them.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's
What was
when
the
like
name of it?
I started. Like okay, like I still am not convinced with the DeFi. Okay, just because like some 5 people call DeFi. Now entire world thinks like all of this has to be like decentralized. Okay, like in the real world, like it doesn't have to be decentralized. Maybe it would have been called open finance. Okay, that would have made much more sense. But like DeFi has become a big buzzword. Like just going with the buzz, like just keeping
Yeah, that also relates to one of the questions which we'll be touching on, which is how to bridge DeFi and CeFi. And as you say, it's at some point things have to connect, and yeah, it'll be interesting to discuss how that can happen. Okay, well, before we move on, I'm actually curious, since 2 of you have partnered with each other, I'm curious to hear about the partnership between MantraDAO and TomoChain, like how you are helping each other, using each other's services.
Ken, you want to take this one, or should I?
You go for it, man.
All righty. Yeah, so we're partnered with TomoChain because essentially MantraDAO runs validator services for a number of different proof of stake blockchain projects. TomoChain is one of them. So we're going to be launching a TomoChain masternode, and essentially anyone who would delegate their Tomo to us can not only earn their native Tomo staking rewards, but they're also able to essentially liquidity mine Ohm token on top of it. Okay. And on top of that, we'll also be listed on TomoDex. And actually just today we were, I guess, voted into the week 3 pool of Lua Swap. So we'll have a Lua. Yeah, I'm excited about that too. A Lua and Ohm pool coming out pretty soon. So I think we're pretty pumped about that one as well. So that's kind of the root of the whole partnership, but always interested in exploring more. And to be honest, I think we're potentially interested to talk to Ravindra about Frontier as well. Maybe a partnership can arise from this conversation as well after this panel.
All right, it's exciting. Great. Okay, well, in that case, let's jump right in. So there's obviously a lot of things going on in the DeFi space. And one of the questions is, well, of course, there's a range of trends, but what do you guys view as the most important emerging trends in the DeFi space? Just to start with a broad overview, we'll get more specific into the cross-chain agnostic stuff in a little bit.
I have some idea, but it's like pretty high level, I guess. So maybe it's not a bad place to start. I think my original idea was going to be talking about sustainable agriculture, aka sustainable yield farming. But I think this is more about just sustainability within DeFi as a whole. Right now there's a lot of projects which are just teasing these really insane APRs to get people to come in, and this is just not a sustainable, I guess, event in general, and it's enticing a lot of kind of bad actors into the space. So I think we really need to see a flight to quality of these protocols and these assets. And I think you've seen that. I mean, in August of this year, everything was going absolutely crazy. You had a different food coin coming out, every 12 hours. And you had a lot of people losing their money when you had rug pulls. And I know that's another question we'll talk about later, but I really think that sustainable DeFi is really the play where we need to go. Start to see people who are developing there's plenty of really cool projects out there. Frontier's obviously one of them. TomoChain's doing some really cool stuff. I think we're doing some cool stuff, and that's definitely one of the things that I'm excited about. Obviously, this whole talks about cross-chain DeFi as well. So most of these things to date have been built on Ethereum. And I think when Polkadot and other interoperable protocols such as Cosmos, start really truly building on some of their DeFi services, you'll see a lot of interesting things being created. Right now, we're actually building for the Polkadot ecosystem, but we're built on we launched on Ethereum. I think people launch on Ethereum because there's network effects and a lot of liquidity there. But obviously, we hope to migrate. Not hope to, we will migrate.
Yeah, it's interesting that you started by mentioning the sort of negative trend, and it reminds me, I'm in a chat group today, and they're talking about this 10,000% APY coin, which they all got in, and they admit themselves that it's a degen thing to do. Like they know there's a high probability of it all failing. And as you say, this can only be sustainable for so long. So it's great to talk with you guys to talk about projects which are doing things which are obviously much more sustainable, at least for the foreseeable future. So yeah, it's good. Let's move on to Kin then.
Yeah, sure. So one other area that I've been looking at that's been picking up is like the utilization of illiquid assets. So the idea behind this is that, about probably in the summer of last year, KuCoin started launching a soft staking service. And so they launched validators on Tomo Chain. And then essentially what would happen is when you stake your tokens, right, they get on Tomo Chain, they get locked for 2 days if you choose to unlock them, unstake them basically. So they're not able to be used. On KuCoin, they launched soft staking. The idea was you'd simply put your assets, your Tomo, on top of onto KuCoin, and then they would stake your assets. You would get part of the returns, but your assets were still liquid. You could still trade, you could still withdraw, but during the time that your assets were there, you're earning an additional reward. Essentially, KuCoin was using Tomo Chain assets and creating validators with user tokens. Now, this has evolved now into a point where we're seeing projects that are launching to free up locked assets. The idea is that you stake using these other platforms, and they in turn provide you with a derivative token which represents your stake. And then what you can do is you can do a number of things with those things. You could put it up for collateral. You could even trade it for another asset. And the idea is that you can only unstake once you're able to pay it back, once you have those assets and the derivative token available. So I find this to be a really natural extension of the idea of allowing everybody to utilize the existing assets that they have. And so we're going to see a lot of interesting financial instruments built on top of it. Even at Tomo Chain, we're currently in the process of essentially allowing it so that the master operators and stakers on Tomo Chain, when they stake their asset, they'll be able to get a derivative token later on and then be able to utilize it for voting purposes. And who knows what else will be built on top of that.
We're also doing liquid staking. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay.
Please, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Expand on it if you want to.
Well, we'll be doing it for Tomo, so or at least that's the plan, as well as other tokens.
Great. Okay. Yeah, it reminds me of Rocket Pool. They want to do that with Ethereum staking, right? As far as I know.
There's some other cool projects. Staffy is going to be doing that. Another one, Akala. In
Ramp
Polkadot,
DeFi is also in that.
Yeah, Ramp and Kira. Shout out to Kira Core. They're one of our partners as well. They're doing it in Cosmos. Kira's cool.
All right. Great. Okay. So Ravindra, what do you think? What do you view as the most important emerging trends?
I want to take a step back, to answer this question, right? From this time, all of this DeFi started, okay, where we have reached, okay, we have got all the moon boys, to talk about DeFi and whatnot. So but they actually are the biggest weakness and they are the biggest plus of DeFi. So right now, okay, DeFi was actually created awareness for the wrong thing, actually, wrong yield numbers and API. So when I say I want to take a step back, we are still at the replication stage of things. Okay, in DeFi space, innovation hasn't started yet. Community is so smart. Okay, you guys launch the token. What is the use of this? What is the utility of this? Okay, let's say I'll ask them. Okay, you can add liquidity in Uniswap. You can add liquidity in various DEXs. You can keep earning liquidity fees out of it. But that's not enough. Okay, when it comes to utilities, creating utilities, I see the latest emerging trends as gamification. Okay, gamification and NFTs will be the next big thing. Okay, and yield farming is almost going to be dead. Only the very sustainable projects, for example, MStable or any stable coin yield farming, who has done it without any crazy APIs, those projects will survive. The upcoming trend will be a lot of gamifications. Okay, a lot of gamification, a lot of NFT related stuff is coming up, and it'll also open up more avenues And also it will have more innovations coming up in future. Okay, like when you think of the current Oracle ecosystem, right? Oracle ecosystem, because we have a very limited things you can do it on chain right now. Like oracles have price feeds, and oracles have like yes or no binary options and stuff. Okay, once we have more rich data on Oracle on chain available, there'll be more avenues in DeFi gets opened. Okay, let's say, okay, if what if entire users portfolio is put into on chain, the entire like analytics put into on chain. Some of the projects is working on such things. Okay, if there is so much data available on chain, then there'll be more innovations come up. Like there'll be more use cases built up. Okay, right now yield farming is boring. Okay, like it's almost everyone knows it's crazy, and like it's unreal.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, NFTs, of course, have been booming. It's been, what, a few weeks now. It's interesting because I heard about NFTs before. Well, it must have been a few months now since I first heard about them. But then a couple of weeks ago, all of a sudden, everyone's talking about NFTs as if they're this new thing. But yeah, it's like you say, we go in trends. And it's interesting that you mentioned that innovation hasn't even started yet. That seems like maybe a controversial point of view. But from the bigger picture perspective, I think you're right. Like we are at the very, very beginning. This is, barely the early stages of even the innovation. So that's why it makes it so exciting to see how it will evolve. And I imagine that trends will come and go very rapidly as we move forward.
Well, I think you also saw the Moon Boys jump from yield farming to NFTs.
Right?
So people are always chasing alpha.
Yeah. I was trying to say, like, we are replicating things from traditional finance. Okay.
Yep.
At the same time, like we want to avoid the bad parts of it. Okay, like we don't want to like take the bad parts of traditional finance into decentralized finance. So that will be like I don't know like how many people want to do that. Like they all of this yield farming is just like savings account narrative. There is nothing more than that. So like that's why like I call it this just a replication. In future, like when there is more gamification around this utility of the token, then things will get more interesting.
I think that's actually where DAOs are going to be really cool, to be honest. And I think Ravindra setting me up nicely here, because essentially the way that we're branding MantraDAO is really like a community governed, almost a crypto bank of sorts, where the staking side acts as the savings product, and obviously we'll have lending products as well. And essentially the community is able to kind of govern this whole system through this DAO, and we have this interwoven Karma protocol, which is kind of like a credit rating of sorts, and we have some gamification with the Mantra Pool and all these other kind of products and features that we're working on. But it really does come down to, you need to have like a very solid community that's engaged and wants to be part of the development of the project. And governance is extremely important. So that's a whole nother thing to talk about, I guess.
For sure. Great. Okay, well, let's move on now to the second question. So this is something which I think is on everyone's mind, given the recent news. So of course, the KuCoin hacker used Uniswap and KyberSwap. I'm not sure if he even used other dexes to sell hacked funds. And of course, recently, just after that, BitMEX was indicted due to serving US customers, although from what I understand, you have to use a VPN to access the site. But in any case, they don't have AML, KYC in place. So how do you guys think this will affect so it's a range of questions here. You can kind of pick the ones that you want to choose. How do you think this will affect the DeFi space? Are DEXs under threat of being shut down, the websites themselves, or the protocols? Are their founders more specifically in danger? I think the IDEX founder got arrested a couple of years ago, although I'm not sure if that was
Alex?
Because the IDEX founder?
Yeah, Alex. Did he?
Well, I saw it on Wikipedia when I was making a video about DEX. I'm not sure if it was the founder or someone related, but yeah, I'm pretty sure someone from IDEX got. I mean, I might be mistaken. It might be another DEX. You can Google it.
IDEX, it's Ether Delta.
Sorry. Yes, that's right.
Okay,
Ether Delta. My bad. Yeah.
Alex
Thank
is
you for
a very,
correcting
very
me.
stand-up guy. I'm glad he's not arrested. Shout out to Alex.
Yeah. Ether Delta. Thanks for that correction. So, In any case, are their founders in danger? What should they do to ensure the safety and longevity of the DeFi space? So who wants to jump in?
I have a couple thoughts to maybe just kick the discussion off. So obviously, you know, the two big events of the past week or so was one, KuCoin, and two, BitMEX indictment. I think in terms of the implications for DeFi, BitMEX has a much broader, longer reaching effect than what, you know, KuCoin had. Everyone knew that centralized exchanges get hacked. That's old news. I mean, I think, you know, having a Uniswap and, you know, other types of DEXs, which are a little bit more user friendly, maybe enhance the ability for users to actually sell tokens on those DEXs now, or excuse me, hackers to sell tokens on those DEXs. But I don't think it's really a massive change. But I think the fact that the U.S. regulator is going after BitMEX in the way that they are is a serious issue. I don't think it's going to necessarily have an impact on DeFi projects now. If anything, I think it's going to impact centralized exchanges more so. I think those are the first ones who are going to be in the firing line, so to speak, if anything. You know, that being said, the way that the SEC regulates and the way that CFTC and those kind of U.S. regulatory bodies go after people, they definitely like to, you know, have one big end of the year closeout bang that they kind of, you know, sign their name off of, and then that's how they make their careers and whatnot to a certain degree. But you know, the fact that they've kind of I guess the big law that they're filing this under is the Bank Secrecy Act, which is the, you know, the KYC AML issue. That's going to be a big thing, and obviously that kind of goes directly opposed to everything that DeFi is all about, where it's, you know, zero KYC, zero AML. So, you know, are they going to start going after the founders of these projects? Because obviously, even if you launch a decentralized protocol, there's people building it. There's companies that have to pay rent. You're paying employees. You know, so how do you truly decentralize the protocol itself? I mean, it's not easy. It's not like Bitcoin. Like, how do you shut down Bitcoin? You can't. But you could shut down, you know, a company that's operating in the U.S. that's launched a decentralized exchange, you know, for example. So I think that's going to be a discussion that's going to be potentially a tough one down the line.
Yeah,
and potentially could be. Go ahead.
Just building on what you're saying there, you know, when it comes to centralized exchanges and decentralized or DeFi, basically, one of the key problems here with is that with centralized exchanges, they're holding custody of assets, and that also means that they have an existing customer base that they have to take care of. The lack of transparency there becomes a big problem, which is why you need to do proper KYC and AML checks. When it comes to decentralized exchanges or DeFi in general, the one thing that we have is pure transparency pretty much for the most part. You know where assets are coming from, you know what's coming in, you know what's going out, unless you're using some kind of privacy protocol or something like that. But essentially, it's going in, what's going out is there. A large part of what exists on Uniswap has been created by other parties. Uniswap itself, even though yes, they are a company, you're right, they're not directly controlling what's happening on their system. They're a technology enabler. Earlier today, we were actually having a conversation about that internally, and you know, Uniswap in a sense is a middleware. So it's providing the ability for composability for other projects to build on top of it, as well as to integrate with it. But they make no decisions in that way. So one of the advantages that DeFi does have is the fact that everything is open, and we're not making those core decisions. Now, that said, considering how much money is sitting on places like Uniswap, the fact that they do have a front-end interface, yes, it's possible that maybe someone will start to investigate that. But I think the simple fact that everything can be traced today provides a narrative that perhaps, you know, they're not in control, provides a bit of a narrative that it may be a little more difficult to go after them, because what do you go after them for specifically? They're not there to regulate their customers directly.
I wonder if they're going to start IP blocking certain countries, because I think that was one of the big things from the statement and the indictment against BitMEX, was that they were allowing people from countries like North Korea and Iran, which obviously have international sanctions, particularly from the US, not to get into politics here, but I think that was one of the big issues for the regulator to a certain degree, and it's an easy thing to pick at. So not saying that that's the way that needs to go, but that's something maybe is a way to get around it. I don't know. Also, I think it helps if you're not poking the sleeping bear by trolling them. Usually
Right.
don't troll the regulator.
Yeah, it was. I was actually shocked to hear that he offered. He said you could just give a coconut to bribe them, and I was just like, why would you say that? Doesn't help you at all. But in any case,
no, definitely not.
Yeah. Like I have my thoughts on this. Like, okay, like if SEC or any regulators wants to come in, okay, they'll find one or the other way to sue some of the founders. Okay. When it comes to Ether Delta, okay, like if I remember it correctly, the charges against him was like on off-chain order book. Okay, which was like if somebody wants to do an off-chain order book, they need to have an exchange license. Okay, to get the longevity on for the DeFi, right? Like DeFi founders, whether like whether to ask if DeFi founders are in danger. Okay, rather we should try to educate DeFi founders. Okay, what are the complications of doing various things? Okay, like if let's say on-chain dexes have there is no order books. Okay, like you don't need there is no middleman. Okay, like there is a fees which is going on. Okay, like that's the only thing which can be questioned. Okay, like you are part of this settlement. Okay, you earn this fees. Okay, that's the only thing which can be questioned. Okay, so otherwise, like if you're well aware of various laws, and if you're if you get some knowledge of what are the things which can put some founder into trouble, then like this, like we will have a good future of DeFi. Okay, like but we can't stop SEC or anybody like coming to us. Only way is like we need to create more educational content, and we need to create more examples how some things can be done. Okay, like if you take example of Uniswap, okay, when they launched, okay, they were accessible in all the countries. Okay, like all the countries. Then they added geofencing restrictions in certain countries before they raised the first fundraising. So it's all like, well, like it's all like it'll evolve over the period of time. All of us as a founders of various DeFi projects, we all have to contribute. We'll have to come up with a good content which can educate like upcoming founders, so that like we will have a sustainable DeFi for a very long time.
I think also part of it's just there's going to be people taking some risks. I don't think sometimes the people who are investing in these projects kind of realize that the people building it are, taking some risks here. You're putting your name out there and putting a target on your back to a certain degree. I mean, I think it's worth it, but there's definitely some inherent risk involved. That's part of the game.
Yeah, and also by considering the risk, okay, if we stop waiting for the regulations, like we are stopping the entire innovation coming through. Like, so we can't stop the innovation. So like we have to work towards getting the regulations. So all of us have to contribute and get some of the like showcase. Okay, this is like we are not doing anything wrong. This is done a decentralized way. We need to showcase everyone this works.
Yeah.
Then like we'll have a strong case. Okay, like and like the one other important question. Okay, as part of the whole question, like our DEX under like threat being shut down. Okay, this is like it's this threat can be reversible, like as in if some DEX get shut down, okay, somebody will launch it anonymously. Like we'll still have a way. We'll still have a way to come.
Yeah, I mean, right now there's of course anonymous founders of exchanges, right? And if everything is all available, then it's like you can shut one down, but the other ones will just pop up. But essentially, as you see, they can do whatever they want, but they're not going to stop DeFi. DeFi is going to, if there's a market for it, then it's going to continue, isn't it?
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay, so moving on now to the third question. DeFi is complicated. Of course, to many of us who are in the space every day, well, even for me, I mean, when it's a new protocol, I have to read up on all the specifics, all the issues, the team, the tokenomics, and all this. But for someone who's just getting into the space, it must be very overwhelming. There are a range of concepts to understand, bad UXs, UIs, rug pulls, obviously left and right. What do you view as the greatest weaknesses and challenges that the DeFi space is facing right now? So feel free to just jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the, and pretty much the biggest challenge right now, aside from onboarding users, really, it's about trust and managing risk. As you're saying, right, you're just discussing that there are new swaps, new yield farming opportunities launching every day, so many anonymous teams. So assessing whether the project is legitimate, whether the smart contracts are legitimate, what can be changed within those smart contracts, and whether the teams are just going to go ahead and rug pull your liquidity right from under you. Last week, I think I read some 5 or 6, cases where people just lost money, and that's just the nature of it right now. So, one of the things I think that's important, something that we've tried to do. So as earlier mentioned, we recently launched a swap ourselves, which is called Lua Swap. And one of the key things about that was we wanted to ensure, number one, that there was some transparency. You knew who the founders were, you knew who the team was, that there were people behind this and behind a different project. So we've been building Tomo Chain for 3 years plus. And so that was one thing. The second thing is making sure that our smart contract was audited. So we had it audited once. We're going to be doing some updates. We're going to be having it audited again by reputable, credible parties as well. It doesn't ensure that it's 100% safe, of course. But I think that that's one of the biggest things is when you're going to participate in this, go with something that hopefully is a little more trustworthy and if possible. But yeah. So.
Absolutely. John?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with that. I think the other issue that we're definitely facing is a bit of a liquidity crunch within DeFi, big time. I mean, you need more people to actually get in and use the things rather than, again, the whales essentially almost luring in unknowing, moon boys chasing yield and dumping their crops on them. We want people to actually use these products because they're building a product that's useful to them and it actually provides value rather than just, chasing some get rich quick scheme. So I think that's something that's going to take some time. Obviously the whole, I know Ravindra was saying that DeFi has been around for a very long time and he's right, but in the, even within the broader crypto space, which is still new, DeFi as it is now is very, very new. It's really been around, it's like August where everything really got hot. And people are still building and I think things move fast in crypto, but in 6 to 9 months you'll start seeing the people who are serious, aside from the ones who've already emerged, the new crop of DeFi projects coming out, particularly on some of these new interoperable protocols. So excited to see what that brings about, and again, hopefully get people to actually use these things rather than just get in, dump, make money, and leave. I think that's a big challenge. So where's the new money going to come from? Essentially, is it going to trickle down from Bitcoin? Are we going to get it in from the broader, bull run? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. It also bothers me, honestly, to hear about all these yield farming things, because I'm like, this is not what I want DeFi to be, but it's just part of the way it is going to happen, and it gives it a bad name. And as an outsider, if someone told me like, hey man, I'm in this DeFi coin, I'm going to get 10,000%, they would just be like, what are you doing? I have no interest in this. It reminds me when I first heard about Bitcoin. I was from some poker player friends of mine about 5 years ago. He's like, yeah, this is the new money. It's gonna, it's gonna change everything. This is, I don't remember exactly what he said, but it just sounded like a bit of a scam. I wish I had learned more about it at that point. But in any case, but yeah. So I also look forward very much to seeing which projects will be sustainable over the long term. And I think some of them you can see very obviously that they're not sustainable, and others are starting to emerge now. I personally view price as king. Like if something has dropped 50% versus something else which has dropped 80%, you can kind of have an idea of which projects people have more faith in terms of which tokens they're holding. So, but if that being said, of course, with
the interesting thing about that with DeFi though is because there's been a bit of a new kind of crop of DeFi projects that have started, including our own token. You've seen that the projects which have already kind of been around for maybe 6 to 9 months potentially withstood that drop a little bit better. When obviously in the last couple of weeks when Bitcoin took a little bit of a tumble, but some of these newer projects, like there's been blood across all of DeFi. I mean, the whole market's down 50 to 70 to 80%. I mean, I think even like Sushi's down like 95%, from the top. So some of these things is they're actually building stuff, but that doesn't mean that the price is going to necessarily hold up. Inflation is obviously a very key part of this. So these are all things to keep into consideration. And then I guess the other kind of thought that I had is that the UI UX element is extremely important. I think Frontier is actually doing a good job on that. Making it simple and easy for people to use. And I think that's potentially how you get new money into the space, is to make it easy for people to use. And right now, a lot of things are very complicated. Like if you're talking to the average Joe, even just the average crypto user, and you're telling them that you need to borrow USDC on Curve and do all these different things, like they don't know how to do that, right? In order to actually properly farm. So how do you make it easy, and how do you make the products usable? And I think that needs to be the focus rather than just chasing the dollar signs in the eyes.
Absolutely, yeah, easy and usable.
DeFi is complicated. Like when Frank says DeFi is complicated, that's when all my entire journey started. Okay, this was the first aha moment. What I had. Okay, when I got into DeFi. Okay, when we started, as I told previously, to create a MakerDAO CDP, there was a need of 12 transactions to be sent to MakerDAO protocol to get a CDP. Okay, it was that much difficult. Okay, the first thing what we wanted to do it, the way we started in DeFi, is it possible to combine all of the steps into one transaction? Okay, that's how all of this started. Okay, it's not the UI, it's also user experience, how user experience will is happening, and that's where it started. Okay, user experience in terms of reducing number of steps to users is very very important. Okay, and as John mentioned, right, where is the new money coming in for DeFi? The liquidity crunch. There is a big problem. Why can't we get a non-crypto user to crypto? Because onboarding is broken. Okay, we can't ask. Okay, let's say I want crypto and DeFi to reach such a stage where I can ask my father, okay, to do something themselves on a mobile app. Okay, but right now it is so difficult. You need to understand the concept of private key. You need to understand the concept of mnemonic seed. Okay, you can't ask a non-crypto guy to note down a seed phrase. If you lose this, you will lose the money. They will stop using crypto right at that stage. Okay, if you abstract all of this and you come up with a seamless onboarding for anything, right? People don't care if they are getting if they are getting savings returns from some underlying compound protocol or M stable. Okay, if we can come up with a user experience zero to get savings in in a seamless way, then things we will definitely get more money. Okay, we are from India. Okay, I've been working on building a bridge between INR, Indian rupee, to DeFi. Okay, so to build a bridge between INR to DeFi, I had to sit down and identify what are the steps I can do. Okay, the first thing, okay, is we had three problems to solve. One thing is DeFi problem that we have already solved with Frontier. And then another thing is onboarding problem. We can't ask user to create a wallet and there has to be seamless way to create a wallet and also recover the wallet in a seamless way. And and also good on-ramp solution with enough liquidity. Okay, when we solve these three problems, okay, we can definitely solve the like liquidity crunch. And and instead of aiming somebody would solve this, okay, we need to work towards like adding um, uh, some of the solutions, building some of the solutions. Okay, like some of the there are some keyless wallets which have improved the user experience for users, but like it's still not the complete solution. Okay, you can't just solve the wallet problem, you need to solve the DeFi and the dApp problem as well. So when I said like in like INR to DeFi, okay, average age of Indian is like 29. Okay, and we have a huge population. We have a huge population, and more than 35% of the people in India has access to internet. And so if at all we want to like pull off this DeFi, like to give access to DeFi to the entire India, the only way we could do is through mobile. That's when like that's like a bigger scheme of things. But like we are working towards it. I don't know when we'll reach that stage, but we are trying to solve stage by stage.
Very
Yeah,
tough challenge,
yeah,
I will say.
brings up a
Mobile
lot of
first
questions.
DeFi is hard. Go
Yeah.
ahead, sorry, Frank.
I mean, because it wasn't it like Google recently had these announcing that they're going to take 30%. Like you have to pay through Google Pay, and they will take 30% of the fees. Do I remember that correctly?
Yes, they did.
Right. So that's, I mean, that's that's exactly the opposite of what DeFi is, where centralized entity just controls everything and says we're going to. So it's and of course Google and Apple, controlling the whole mobile app space. It makes it. I think it was Vitalik Buterin who was saying like, yeah, we need to create a platform on which mobile applications can run, and yeah, there's so many things to be built and so many questions and challenges, but it just makes it even more exciting for me personally to be in the space, because every day there's something new, something interesting happening. All right, guys, so we are now approaching the end of the questions, the pre-thought out questions for this group. After this last question, we will have 3 or 4 questions from the community. So this last question for you guys is, what are the primary advantages that DeFi aggregator services or these cross-chain agnostic services offer to new and existing users? What problems do they solve?
So the aggregator narrative, okay, like even if you see Google, okay, Google was just an aggregator of content. So aggregator will put everything into perspective. The main reason why I started Frontier, okay, like I was having like protocol positions in 3 protocols. I like to manage those positions. I had to open 3 Chrome tabs. That was the whole idea behind Frontier. Okay, like I was trying to solve my own problem. Being a power user, I'm facing this problem. A lot of other users will also face a similar problem. So aggregator will definitely solve this. Okay, like having everything in one place, and also like it'll give a overview of entire portfolio. And I still remember, okay, even before DeFi became really big in Ethereum, okay, all the DeFi was started in Tron. Okay, Tron built a lot of DeFi apps. Okay, like actually they built a lot of betting apps. So the people they did not get enough due. Okay, like nobody speaks about them. But overall, the way it looks, okay, like they started all the betting apps. Okay, but it really took off in Ethereum. Okay, so it's okay to the advantage of being cross chain, chain agnostic. We don't want to become an Ethereum maximalist. Okay, like if Ethereum has a maximum liquidity right now, okay, if there is another protocol, another chain which has enough amount of liquidity and users, why do we need to stuck with only Ethereum? And like Ethereum has its own problems. So if some chain gives all the liquidity what Ethereum has without crazy gas, people will definitely move to that. So when we are chain agnostic, like switching between chains are very easy, and it'll be really useful for users as well. Okay, like they doesn't have to go to any other application. They can't have like 5 different applications for 5 different chains and protocols.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Maybe
You did a pretty
John?
good job of summarizing that.
Yeah.
I don't have too much to add. I guess from our perspective, why I'll just come at it from a different angle. I think from our perspective at MontraDAO, why we think like cross-chain and chain agnostic perspectives are good is that because we are so community centric, coming from our DAO structure, we really do like to build upon the very unique communities that all of these different protocols have. To kind of get their influence, their perspective, their users, their liquidity, all these different things into our system, and hopefully build upon that. So, we want to support all of these different chains. Like I said, we work with, Tomo Chain, obviously, we work with the Polkadot ecosystem, Cosmos ecosystem. We're running validated for Band, Kava, Luna, and several others that I can't say yet. And we'll be more than happy to support other interoperable protocols down the line as well. And we want these people to come in and take part and share their perspectives and hopefully grow our larger MontraDAO Sherpa community. That's what we call ourselves. So and that's kind of where we see it, and it's more of a community approach. Of course, you have all the intangibles and all the technical things, but the community is a very important part of crypto, and that's a big thing to consider as well.
Yeah, I'm personally a big fan of this idea of aggregating and of connecting and being aware of all these different blockchains and essentially supporting them all, because you get so much tribalism, right? Where it's like, oh, Ethereum, well, of course you have the Bitcoin maximalists, we're not even going to talk about them, but Ethereum maximalists or Polkadot maximalists, or it's going to be this, it's going to be that. But if you start having a perspective of what all these different chains have to offer, that I think would be put you in a very unique position to be able to have the broader view of what's working, what isn't working, what the advantages and disadvantages are of different products. And I think that's going to be very important in such a fast moving industry. You need people like yourselves who are getting this sort of bigger picture idea of what's working and what isn't working. And so, yeah, it's great. Maybe Kin, you want to finish off with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming in from a blockchain perspective, as a public blockchain, one of the things that I focused a lot of my time on last year. We knew that the idea of interoperability was going to be coming into play at some point. Tomo Chain believes that there is going to be a multi-chain future. Whether that means because a chain has more geographic focus, or it has a specialization in a particular industry, we're going to see that. So we were looking to kind of form different partnerships and explore the interoperability aspect of that. One thing that we ended up realizing coming into 2020 was that as liquidity started building up on Ethereum, and we had little pockets on other chains, what was really kind of attractive for the whole cross-chain space was really looking at that liquidity. How do you access liquidity? Users to want to perhaps play where the money is at, and so how do you get all the chains kind of talk together? And in this way, what I think we ended up seeing with guys like MontraDAO and Frontier and other players is that perhaps it's not the blockchain's problem to solve. The aggregation of having a single place to go to, a third party which develops this and in a decentralized way where they're supporting multiple chains, allows for users to have access to all chains from a single location. And considering that Tomo Chain's ethos is to be on every chain possible, be accessible, participating in an aggregation medium makes a lot of sense. So, recently we decided to bring Tomo Chain over to Ethereum. We have a bridge. We wrapped Tomo, brought it over to Ethereum, locked some of our liquidity into Uniswap, launched a new product, LuaSwap, and that's one way of doing it. But to be honest, I love the way that that these guys are participating and playing this, and I think that's going to end up bringing many more users into play to participate in DeFi, yield farming, whatever other activities you want, and just being able to also access the dApps across the chains together. So at least from a blockchain perspective, I think that they're solving a big part of the problem in terms of bringing users on board, because once users are using their services, they're also going to see Tomo Chain as well as other chains as well. So it's a great introduction for us too.
Great, yeah, absolutely. All right, so now we'll finish up with some community questions. So we had a whole bunch of people who posted some great questions. We picked out 3 or 4 of these. Let's start with this one from CryptoBoy237. Every day there are new DeFi projects that offer features like staking, lending, swapping. Many of them end up being copies of one another with small tweaks, and yet more end up being rug pulls. What do you think the DeFi space will look like 1 year from now? What can we expect?
Well, I'll be really quick. I think we've seen, to a certain degree, this play out several times before in crypto. Obviously we had the whole ICO boom, and I think you're definitely going to see the speculators coming in and trying to, take advantage of the situation. But I will say that the challenge and the bar has been set a lot higher to actually, okay, rug pulls are one thing. If you can shill a fake enough project and pull the rug on people, that is another thing. But to like build a scam, like a truly well thought out scam project in DeFi is hard, because I think it moves so quickly. The investors are savvier now, and they do their due diligence a lot more. So I think you're going to have a really pretty like creme de la creme crop of projects that are going to emerge in 6 to 12 months that have really built some cool stuff. The technology's advanced. The people have been in it longer, so they know what they're doing. So you'll see the guys who are the players emerge, and I think hopefully all the people on this call will be part of that. I think so.
Let's hope so.
It's it's really a wild, wild west kind of territory that we're living in. It's where greed matches opportunity, and when we're seeing these projects, it's the thing I actually really like about it is, yes, there are so many projects now launching. When we see any industry, as JP was talking about, right, you're going to see a boom. All of a sudden, there's a match. You're going to have so many entrants coming in. Eventually, there'll be oversaturation. You'll have some consolidation, a lot of them exiting, and eventually, yeah, you'll have probably a handful or a decent number of projects that will hopefully survive into the following year. The other thing is, when you're looking at the space, what you're really doing is you're trying to build a new financial structure, a new financial ecosystem. As Ravindra mentioned, part of it's going to be mimicking that of the traditional space, but there's going to be a significant difference in terms of the approach that this space will kind of evolve into. And so to me, though you're going to end up seeing so many failures, the fact that you can just take an existing project, fork it, and essentially move $40, $50, $100 million of liquidity from one project to another and within a couple of hours, I mean, it's amazing. So we're going to see more projects coming up. It's easy to launch in many ways. And those which iterate in the right way, where they're providing feature sets that people do want, we're going to start to see, I think that we're going to start to see feature sets evolve so quickly that in a year's time, I don't think we'll be able to necessarily recognize it, but it's going to be a great thing, because those that do survive are really going to probably be setting themselves up to become the future DeFi banks, of our crypto space, which is really the whole purpose of this whole yield farming business. It's really about composability. How do you attract liquidity first, and then how do you build new financial instruments on top of it? And wherever liquidity is happy to sit, that's where you're going to end up seeing all these financial instruments grow. So what it's actually going to look like, I don't know, but I think we're going to see many more interesting plays for using liquid assets and illiquid assets down the road, and we're going to see that evolving very quickly.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right,
I have a very small view. Okay, like as in, I think like in 1 year down the line, there'll be more wiser people. Okay, like they like more experienced people who have already, like we will find more people who have gone through these scams, and like so the entire ecosystem will be much more mature. Okay, I don't think you can keep on like scamming like the community people. Okay, like people will be more wiser, and they will definitely try to identify, okay, if there are more, the number of rug pools won't keep on increasing. It'll stop at some point, and like people won't put any liquidity. It's already happening. Most yield farming is already dead.
That was in like
Yeah,
2 months.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway here, especially for newcomers to this industry, is that DeFi, although there's a lot of problems and weaknesses and challenges, is not going away. Like, it's in a year, it's only going to be stronger and better. and more robust. So another question, so this is specifically relating to, well, MantraDAO and Frontier, although I suppose it applies just, I'm going to actually modify this question slightly just so that each of you can have a take on it. So can you list 3 to 4 killer features of any of your platforms, of your products, services, and then furthermore, what is the competitive advantage your platform has that you feel most confident about? So
I'll start. All right, killer feature. You can liquidity mine Ohm with Tomo.
Oh yeah.
That's one. I think one of the cool features that we're building is called the Mantra Pool. And essentially it's a pool where all the foundation's staked assets, 25% of those go into it on a weekly basis. And essentially the users can burn our token, the Ohm token, to get into the pool and win those assets. So they'll essentially be able to win a pool of any number of different staked POS assets on a weekly basis. And I think that can get fairly large as our, what we call AUD, assets under delegation, grows. So that's one thing I think is cool. And then the other one that I'd like to probably highlight is we call it like the DeFi flywheel. So this actually goes right into Kin's turning illiquid assets into liquid assets. So essentially we're also doing the liquid staking for any of the different proof of stake blockchains that we're validating for. So that could be DOT, that could be Tomo, that could be Kava, whatever. So you'd have, using the example of DOT, you have the liquid derivative of it, which we've been calling Ohm DOT. The name is TBD. But essentially you can take the liquid version of the staked asset, then you can take it over to our, our lending side of things, use it as collateral to then borrow our stablecoin, which then you can use to buy more DOT to then stake again. And it's kind of like this whole DeFi flywheel of how we call it. So that's something that we think is pretty cool as well. There's all number of different things you can do with that. And then the last one I'd like to highlight is the Karma protocol, which is essentially our kind of in-house incentivization mechanism for getting users to actually take part in our governance. So they can get Karma, they could literally earn Karma, which obviously everyone knows what Karma is, to essentially enhance their financial benefits. But it also gives them a kind of a credit history. So we'll be able to take all these different, both qualitative and quantitative metrics from their history in a pseudonymous way and be able to tailor different financial products to them. We can decrease their staking fees. We can improve their borrowing rates. Potentially, we can even start using under collateralized lending through this protocol, essentially this history of the user's activity.
All right, lots of exciting stuff going on there. I especially like the roadmap of Ohm. You have loads of things coming up and sort of planned for certain dates. It's not every project which has the roadmap sort of so thought out. So
we have a lot of, we have maybe too much stuff, but we're working through it.
Yeah, it's great though. It's good to have ambition. And okay, and of course there was so much hype around Ohm when during the DeFi boom. I remember it was one of the most hyped Polkadot projects. So it's good to hear you guys are still working hard. Okay, so we're approaching the end of the hour, so we'll just finish with Kin and Ravindra from this question. I'd just like to point out that this question was posted by BayHacky80 on Twitter, so feel free to jump in, either of you.
Sure. So for Tomo Chain, I think a few of the key killer features for us. Number one, I had mentioned at the very beginning, Tomo Z, which allows for any token to be issued where the gas fee is paid by the token itself. So purely frictionless transaction. So guys like Frontier, when they brought their token into Tomo Chain, it's a wrapped token, but users are able to basically freely send from wallet to wallet without having to say hold Tomo at all. So it's just a frictionless feel, and I can't wait for Ohm to come in as well in the near future for that same feel for their end users. The second thing about that is we have a protocol called Tomo X, so which allows us to launch a permissionless DEX. And these permissionless DEXs feed into that no gas feature where users simply can go to any of the DEXs when they're trading. Again, they don't have to hold Tomo, they simply trade, and whatever fees they pay are in the token pairings that they're trading in. So again, very much a frictionless experience. And finally, I think the latest project that we launched, the Lua swap that we just launched, this is intended to be multi-chain. So what we did was we launched it on Ethereum first, and we're going to be launching it next on Tomo Chain, then Binance Smart Chain, and likely on Solana. Now, the thing I really like about this is that to begin with, we're going to have independent Lua swaps on different chains. But moving forward, the idea is for each of these versions to then have cross-chain swaps. So you can have them speaking to one another. And then finally, the most technically challenging part of this entire thing that our team is working through is once you have that liquidity in there, how can you tap that for order book trading? So we have our Tomo DEX, which allows for order book trading. So how do we utilize that integrate that into an order book trading kind of schema? So the idea really is to kind of fit all of these things together. And this has really been a mid long-term kind of plan for us for quite a while now. And so I think this is going to be pretty interesting, because then what happens is no matter where the liquidity is, we'll be able to tap into that, whether you want to do pure AMMs or you're looking for spot trading or even spot lending and borrowing.
Great, exciting. All right,
Yeah.
I know we covered, of course, Lua Swap on the altcoin Buzz blog, where, of course, we've covered all of your projects. Even Frontier, I made a whole video just about it. So it's exciting to hear about all these developments going on. Okay, Ravindra, maybe you'd like to finish off?
Yeah, so I'll keep it short. So the biggest feature which we have right now, which we are keep on improving, is the notifications of DeFi state. Okay, that has been like very useful for our users. Okay, for example, if something like a Black Tuesday happened, right? Like if entire market goes down, there is no way, okay, like to notify users if their CTP is getting liquidated, if their compound finance percentage, the interest percentage has drastically increased or decreased, and there is no way to like notify users if there's a set rebalance happened. So that has been very important feature which we have been building, the notifications being sent out to like our users. And the upcoming features, okay, we are building some of the utility for front, and also the we are coming up with our own chain. Like we are building a Cosmos SDK based blockchain, Frontier chain, where we are trying to solve the biggest problem of a decentralized key management. Okay, we want to have a seamless way of creating a wallet and also recovering the wallet, and we want to do this do this for multiple blockchain, not just Ethereum. Okay, I could have easily like done this for Ethereum through smart contract, but I want to solve this for all the blockchains. So like we are coming up with a Frontier chain, which has a new category called decentralized key management.
Will you have staking?
Yeah,
That's really cool.
Can we run a validator for you guys?
I like it.
We'll talk offline.
Bootstrapping security these days. Bootstrapping security is really easy these days. It's not the same case like back in like last year, or maybe like in 2018, it wasn't the same case. Okay, like you wouldn't get so many validators right away.
For sure. Actually, I mean, that's a whole nother topic, but I think the like how the validator space is changing is pretty interesting as well, because it's not just about 24/7 uptime and making sure you don't get slashed anymore, because that's like expected. There's what are the other intangibles that you can bring to the game, whether it's community focus, whether it's additional financial incentives, whether it's liquid staking. Obviously I'm biased. I think we're ticking all of those boxes, but that's kind of like the next stage of that whole space, and I think it's pretty exciting as well.
Definitely. Well, we're now at the end of the hour, unfortunately, but it's been a real pleasure to talk to all of you, hearing about the specifics of DeFi, also getting the bigger picture, hearing about how DeFi started in the chat with 3 Project. That was cool insight. And yeah, it's I want to especially thank Kin and Tomo Chain for organizing and setting this all up, and I look forward to part 3 of the Defining DeFi series. So with that being said, I wish all the viewers the best of luck with DeFi, not to get too obsessed with any of these crazy APYs, and to stick with the sustainable projects and the people who are working on long-term things, like all the gentlemen and the people in this chat. in this
Oh,
panel.
thank you so
guys.
much, Frank. It's been great,
All
guys.
right.
Thanks for joining in.
Thanks a lot, guys. See you later.
Thanks, guys. Thanks. Yeah.